Well, about that time again. The US government once approved a plan to fake terrorist attacks on its own people. This was not a theory or a rumor, but a real, written and documented proposal. Hijacked planes, bombings, and civilian casualties, all designed to justify a war. And the only reason it did not happen is because one man said no. Welcome back to Purple Phosphor, where we dig into stories that sound impossible until they don't. Because tonight we are breaking down Operation Northwoods. What it actually was, how far it was willing to go, and why what happened just a year afterwards still leaves people asking questions. I just got a haircut and I am looking especially Pidgeotto today. My apologies, I'm not that excited, it's just fluffy.
Pidgeotto, return!
Okay, to understand how something like this even gets proposed, you have to go back to the early 1960s, the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union were not just rivals. They were locked in a global standoff, where one wrong move could mean nuclear war. Every decision carried weight, every alliance mattered. And just sitting 90 miles off the coast of Florida was Cuba. Is Cuba. It's not gone. After Fidel Castro took power, Cuba aligned itself with the Soviet Union. And for the United States, that was not just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. Because, you know, it was right there, close enough to escalate. Now, the US did already try to deal with Castro. In 1961, the CIA backed an invasion known as the Bay of Pigs. The plan was to send Cuban exiles in, spark an uprising, and remove Castro from power. Instead, it pretty much collapsed immediately. The invasion failed. Publicly. And it made the United States look weak at pretty much the worst possible time. After that, the pressure shifted. Military leaders did not want another failed covert operation. They wanted something decisive, something that would justify direct action. So in 1962, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you know, just the highest ranking military officials in the country, put together a plan, a formal proposal. Again, this is not speculation or theory, this is documented. This operation's name was Operation Northwoods. The goal was simple: create a justification for war with Cuba. But the way they planned to do it is what changes everything. Because instead of waiting for an attack, they planned to manufacture one. Northwoods outlined multiple scenarios, each one designed to make it look like Cuba attacked the United States. One proposal suggested the staging of hijacking an American aircraft. One described replacing a real passenger plane with a drone and then destroying it mid-flight, and then blaming Cuba for it. Think about that a minute. A civilian airliner turned into a prop for a false narrative. I'm not saying anything, but we're all thinking it. And it didn't stop there. The plan included staging attacks on US military bases, blowing up American ships, creating false casualty lists, and even holding funerals for victims that never existed. And in some versions of the plan, real casualties were actually on the table. Was not required in the plan, but was considered acceptable. And this is a good time to plug some of my merch, like this wonderful koozie right here. Why don't you head on over to purplephosphor.com for more. Graham.
What?
We got new merch!
Holy f***.
That's right, we finally got merch. We've got beanies, shirts, koozies, a little something for everyone. All of this is available at purplephosphor.com. If you've been itching for a chance to rep your favorite shitty YouTuber at home, now's your chance. Isn't that right, guys? Not only is buying merch the best way to support the channel, aside from giving a like and a comment, if you don't, my grandma's going to beat the shit out of me. I'm serious, she's impossibly strong. And impossibly fast. Please buy merch. So go ahead and visit purplephosphor.com for more. Go ahead and check it out, and thank you again for watching. Back to the episode. There were also proposals to carry on attacks in American cities, bombings, shootings, general acts of terror, all designed to be blamed on Cuban operatives. Even Cuban refugees, people who already fled Castro, were considered potential targets just to strengthen the narrative. This whole thing was not about defense. This was about control. Control of perception, control of public opinion. Because if the American people believed they were attacked, we would not have to sell them a war. It would just be demanded. I can literally hear the Toby Keith anthems playing in my head. And what separates this from most things we talk about on this channel is this was not speculation. Operation Northwoods was officially declassified. The documents are real, and you can read them line by line. So where does John F. Kennedy come into this? At the time, he was president, and when this proposal made its way up to him, he rejected it. And I mean, he rejected it entirely. He did not even humor it. He pretty much just looked back at the room and said, "What the fuck? No." And officially, that's where the story ends. At least, if you're not paying attention long enough. The plan was never carried out, and nothing from Northwoods was ever implemented that we're aware of. But the timeline is kind of what makes this feel like it wasn't finished yet, because just over 1 year later, November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Now, to be perfectly clear, there is no confirmed connection between Operation Northwoods and JFK's assassination. No documents tie the two together. No hard proof establishing a link, but context matters, because what we do know is this. A sitting president was presented with a plan from top military leadership that involved staging attacks on American soil, and he said no. And then not long after, he's gone. Does that mean those events are connected? Maybe not, but it does something else. It changes how you look at that moment in history, because it proves concepts like Operation Northwoods were not impossible. Are not impossible. It was real, written down, and seriously considered. And that's the part that sticks. It's not what was planned, but was what was acceptable to even propose. Because once something like that exists, it's impossible to pretend it did not. You can't pretend the line was never crossed. So the next time you hear someone say, "You're being paranoid," that would never happen, or the government would not go there. Just remember, there was a time where they almost did. And the only thing that stopped them was one man. And that right there, my friends, is why I consider politicians one of the lowest tiers of life forms, them and bicyclists. I fucking hate bicyclists and their goddamn little leotards, and I consider it a civic duty to slow down, roll down your window, look them in the eye and say, "Hey, you look like a fucking nerd," and then speed off. Because you know goddamn well they're gonna go home to their spouse or their cat and they're gonna look them dead in the eye and be like, "Can you believe some incel called me a fucking nerd?" They're goddamn road mosquitoes, and them and politicians have a special level in hell they'll be going to. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Best way to support the channel is to drop a like, a comment, or check out the merch at purplephosphor.com. Stay curious, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.